Hey there guys, welcome to Dinos World once again. It's a beautiful Sunday morning right here in Hyderabad and the stage is set for a perfect ride, I guess. And it's been a horrible week. I've been down with a bad cold, so I'm sorry I couldn't get as many uploads as possible as I usually do. I'm going to make it up to you guys in the coming weeks for sure. And today I'm going to ride with my friends from Suchitra Circle. That's a landmark here in Secunderabad, and we're going to go to a friend's place. So let's see how that turns out. What's more interesting is my friend is getting his brand new RTR 200. So I guess it's time to hit the road, and perfect weather to ride, and I'm really looking forward to this ride. Now, as we are headed towards the meetup point, first of all, I'd like to thank the HYD biker Shaker, who is a very good friend of mine, for not only bringing his bike, but also allowing me to ride it all through the trip. And he also helped me get most of the riding footage. So thank you once again, Shaker. And feel free to check his channel out. I'm leaving a link in the description portion below. Also, I'd like to thank my fellow biker brother and an avid tourer, Mr. Vijay, for inviting me to this ride. Apart from Vijay, who rides an RC 390, and Shamal, who rides a Harley, and Anand, whom I know from the Benelli owners group, I don't know anyone else who's going to be a part of this ride. I personally, however, love making friends, and that's how I have a huge friend circle. I believe that we only live once, and we need to live in such a way that people would remember us and miss us when we are gone. I was looking forward to meet the others on this ride and see what life has in store for us. Meanwhile, I'm going to start talking about a relevant topic as I usually do. And once we start out from the meetup point, I'll be talking about mileage tips and bike maintenance tips this time around. So here we are at the meetup point. So the guys participating in this trip are Vijay, who rides an RC 390, Shamal, who rides a Harley Super Glide, Vikram, who rides a Hyosung GT650N, Harsha, who rides an RC 200, Pawan, who rides a Hyosung GT250R, Anand, who rides a Benelli 600i, Hari, who rides a Harley Dyna Street Bob, and Amir, who rides an RC 390. I was really happy to meet them because they came across as warm-hearted individuals who had great amount of love and respect for one another. I thoroughly enjoyed riding alongside them and would like to thank each one of them for being so good towards me. So as we are headed towards our destination, which is of course Hari's farmhouse, that's nearly 100 kilometers away, I think it's about time that we dive into today's topic, which is of course talking about mileage tips and bike maintenance tips. Now, I never prefer to be called an expert because I continue to learn every time I get to meet experienced bikers and technicians. These tips are from a common man's perspective, something I myself have tried and realized that they do make a difference. If you would like to add some useful info, please leave them in the comment section such that it would help all those who land up on this page. Now, talking about point number one, the first and most important point that most of us don't care about is reading the user manual. It might hardly take an hour or two for us to go through it, but those 2 precious hours that we spend would really ensure that the bike would serve us long and well in its lifespan. Point number 2, the second and most important point, of course, is the run-in period or the engine break-in period. This usually holds good for the first 1000 kilometers that you clock on the odometer. For first 500 kilometers, do not rev the bike beyond 4500 rpm, and for the next 500 kilometers, that is up to 1000 kilometers on the odo, do not rev the bike beyond 6000 rpm. During this period, since the engine is brand new, its various parts wear and polish themselves into correct operating clearances. So this is very crucial and important if you want your bike to be in its prime form for long, and this plays a very important role in optimizing the mileage of your bike as well. I know we get tempted to rev up the bikes, especially when they are powerful, but we need to resist that such that we can enjoy the bike thoroughly later on for the rest of our lives. Also, experts believe that we should not cross 50 kilometers per hour for the first 1000 kilometers and 70 kilometers per hour up to 2000 kilometers on the odo. Now this may vary slightly as the bike's engine capacity increases or decreases. You can plus or minus the speed by 10 kilometers per hour depending on which segment your bike falls into. What I have mentioned holds good for 150 to 160cc bikes. Now getting to point number 3, we need to avoid frequent braking and clutching. Now inexperienced bikers usually tend to apply brakes very frequently. It is a good habit in emergency cases because safety comes first, but we can avoid that in non-emergency cases and rely more on engine braking. You can try that by downing the throttle without holding the clutch for a while. You'll notice that the vehicle's speed cuts down rapidly, especially in case of higher capacity bikes where we tend to get even engine braking levels, which we can set to our personal preference. Also, when slowing down, avoid frequent clutch usage. You learn this by experience, but by learning this practice, your clutch plates and clutch cables would last longer. This too ensures that your bike's actual mileage figure doesn't take a hit. Now point number 4 is to avoid sudden and over revving or over accelerating your bike. This has become a fashion these days. We want our bikes to make more noise and we want to get ourselves noticed. That is all fine, but too much of anything can be harmful. So avoid suddenly accelerating or harshly ringing the throttle very often. Smooth and linear acceleration would lead to better mileage. Talking about point number 5, shifting gears at the right RPM is also very crucial. The suggested RPM for shifting gears is at and around 5000 RPM. It is important to pull the clutch completely for smoother gear shifts. Not pulling the clutch completely also reduces life of clutch plates and results in rougher gear shifts. Also, you need to be in the right gear at the right speed. For first gear, the speed is around 0 to 10 kilometers per hour. For second gear, it is 10 to 25. For third gear, it's around 25 to 35. For fourth gear, it's around 35 to 45. For fifth gear, it's around 45 to 55. And for the sixth gear, it's around 55 to 65 kilometers per hour. Now, again, the speeds could vary for higher capacity bikes, and this above mentioned speeds hold good for a 150 to 160cc category bikes. For 200cc bikes, ride below 70 kilometers per hour in the top gear to get good mileage, and for 150 to 160cc bikes, it's better to ride below 60 kilometers per hour in top gear to get the best mileage. Well, after riding for about an hour or so, we reached at the tiffin center where we planned to have our breakfast. All of us were starving by that time already, and fortunately we found ourselves a good breakfast spot. The quality of food served was extremely decent. Then as we decided to head to our destination from there, we realized that the spot was quite amazing to get some snaps. So we headed up the incline to get ourselves a spectacular view that would serve as the perfect background for our snaps. The weather was absolutely amazing. It was slightly overcast, but fortunately it didn't rain all that much, and we could almost ride the whole day in such weather, and the roads were superb as well. Now continuing from where I paused, the next point for the bike maintenance and extracting good mileage is not to park the vehicles or bikes in direct sunlight to avoid petrol evaporation. Now continuing from where I paused, the next point for bike maintenance and extracting good mileage is not to park your vehicles in direct sunlight to avoid petrol evaporation. When parked under the sun, the temperature inside the fuel tank rises. Now this causes the fuel to slowly but surely start converting into its gaseous state and evaporate over a period of time. So it is better to find some shelter to park your bike or car. Also, when exposed to direct sunlight, the paint starts fading away more easily. So parking your vehicle under a shelter prevents two major issues from happening. Point number 7 is to turn off the ignition while stopping at signals. Now we think that it doesn't make much of a difference, but it does. First of all, if the majority of us resort to doing this, we can reduce the pollution drastically, and more importantly, we can save considerable amount of money that we spend on fuel. Now, point number 8 is changing the engine oil on time and using the recommended oil grade. It is very important to stick to the recommended oil grade mentioned in the user manual. Please ensure that the service technician uses the recommended grade oil. Sometimes they tend to go with whatever stock is available and say it doesn't make much of a difference. Actually, it does. Also, don't experiment too much with what you read on forums and blogs with regard to fully synthetic or semi-synthetic oil, because that can result in a disaster or a catastrophe for your bike. Now, point number 9 is servicing the bike at scheduled intervals. It's always better to service it a little ahead of the scheduled date rather than waiting or going past that date. Servicing the bike on time is like taking food on time. If we don't take food on time, we develop gas problems. Something similar happens to the bikes as well. Also, ensure that the air filter is cleaned regularly and the chain is lubricated just about sufficiently, which results in the bike offering a smoother ride. Now, point number 10 is using recommended fuel grade. Now, some bikes recommend high octane fuel. As it is, the fuel quality available in our country is horrible. So if the manual clearly mentions to use a particular grade fuel, then try and find the petrol bunk that offers high octane fuel in your locality and use the same. Now, high octane fuel is usually recommended for higher capacity bikes upwards of 300cc. Also, try and fill petrol from the same bunk to maintain consistency. Now, high octane fuel can be harmful in some cases when used for lower capacity bikes, because high octane fuels have additives like friction busters which may not suit your bike. Plus, higher octane rating means more heat is developed in the engine, which is not good for your bike. So please read the manual carefully and consult someone from the dealership or the company before filling your bike with high octane fuel like speed, etc. Point number 11 is not to make too many mods to your bike. Try to keep the vehicle in its stock form. Only then it would serve you loyally all through its lifespan. Well, finally, we reached Hari's farmhouse, placed right in the heart of nature, surrounded by lush green fields and trees. Breathing fresh air right in the midst of the vast expanses and the overcast skies with a gentle drizzle blowing across was like attaining nirvana and experiencing sheer bliss away from the horrible pollution, broken roads, and dust-ridden streets of the concrete jungle. Well, after chilling out and sharing some stories, we headed back home, and I would not be able to forgive myself if I don't speak about the real hero of this ride, the TVS Apache RTR 204V. What a bike, man. Truly, it offered amazing stability even as I was doing triple-digit speeds consistently for most of the ride. It offered great refinement with no vibrations whatsoever while cruising at speeds of around 100 to 110 kilometers per hour. The bike offered extremely decent mileage for a 200cc bike. We had only filled petrol worth rupees 500, and there were nearly 4 points left in the fuel gauge after returning from the ride. I took it up to a top speed of 124 kilometers per hour, as you can see the top speed flashing on the speedo in this particular clip. The clutch feel was good, the gearbox was smooth, the throttle response was phenomenal, the power delivery was smooth and linear, the brakes even without ABS were amazing. The suspension was superb. The only issue I noted was that the bike was fishtailing a bit when I took it beyond 120 kilometers per hour. Maybe there was some issue with this particular bike, but the rear tire was slightly wobbly at speeds upwards of 120 kilometers per hour. Well, that's about it for now. I hope you find the info shared useful. If you want to add something more, please feel free to share it in the comments section such that it would benefit others landing on this page. I personally thoroughly enjoyed this ride and would make more such videos when time permits. So until next time, this is Dino saying ciao, take care, God bless, and ride safe.